2200 hours and a warm welcome to GRTS News with me, Aissatou Keita. We are broadcasting live for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. On the top of the news, rising prices of some essential food commodities raise concerns among Gambians. Minister of Trade joins us live for an exclusive interview. The tug of war between the Independent Electoral Commission and the Gambia Public Procurement Authority over the start of voter registration reaches the National Assembly. GRTS investigates the rise in use of a tobacco substance among some women for fulfilling sexual pleasure. But is this a healthy practice? Find out later in the news. And in sports, the Gambia's football chief is one step away from becoming a member of FIFA's decision-making body. We will tell you how. And away from home, another kidnapping case in Nigeria as gunmen abduct 7 children from an orphanage in the capital, Abuja. Well, these and much more coming ahead in this edition of the news with me, Aissatou Keita, and thanks for joining us. Well, a warm welcome to the news. We begin with the Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Toure, who on Tuesday presided over the launch of the report on the study of knowledge, attitudes and practices towards COVID-19 in the Gambia at the Sadaura Kairaba Jawara International Conference Center in Bijulo. The objective of the study is meant to reinforce and complement efforts of the Gambia government by providing data for tailored interventions in the fight against COVID-19 and for use as reference material in future pandemics. Yero Jallo has the details.
The launching ceremony was presided over by the Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Toure. In her opening statement, Dr. Toure spoke at length on the significance of the report, noting that it has evaluated people's knowledge about COVID-19, their attitudes towards the disease, and some of the best practices during the pandemic. Dr. Toure further stated that the study also looked at the effectiveness of the state of public health regulations in curbing the spread of the virus.
As chair of the National COVID-19 Committee, my office through the National Population Commission Secretariat, in partnership with the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, University of the Gambia and AT&T Consulting Services, conducted the first ever nationwide study on knowledge, attitudes and practices of people towards COVID-19 in the Gambia. Globally, KAP studies are a widely used method of measuring people's knowledge, attitudes and practices during the epidemics with the aim of establishing if there are knowledge gaps within a population and getting more data for evidence-based interventions.
She used the opportunity to challenge all ministries and government departments to harmonize the report as the fight against COVID-19 continues. The Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmad Lamin Samate, dilated on the importance of the report, which brought together critical stakeholders in the realms of research and development in the country to assess people's knowledge and attitude in their practices towards the deadly virus.
With the H1N1 viruses in the past and other epidemics, the developing countries were left out in the sense that the well-to-do countries, the influential rich countries with all the resources bought all the vaccines. Now the WHO and partners said, no, we need to do something for the developing countries, and they came up with this COVAX facility that guarantees the availability of vaccines for countries like the Gambia.
Dr. Samate urged the people to adhere to the Ministry of Health and WHO recommendations and guidelines. For her part, the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Sanyang Kinte, revealed that globally women experience a significant burden on their time and caregiving responsibilities as families are compelled to stay at home during COVID-19 lockdown, thus exposing them to gender-based violence, among other things.
Experiences from previous pandemics showed that women and girls are active actors for change, and they experience the effects of the crisis in different and often more negative ways. Given that COVID-19 does not discriminate, the response to it should not also be discriminatory.
The WHO country representative in the Gambia, Dr. Nestor Turune, has sought his organization's continued support and cooperation in the fight against the global pandemic. The vote of thanks was delivered by Nyakasi Sanyang of GIVOS. The ceremony was attended by cabinet ministers, senior government officials, and a host of other dignitaries. For GRTS News, this is Yero Jalo reporting.
Concerns mount over the rise in prices of goods, mainly food items, in the local market. GRTS has been investigating the causes. Ibrahim Ajala visited some marketplaces where he engaged both vendors and customers about the soaring prices, and he prepares this report.
It's another business day in the metropolis and surroundings. Commercial activities are in full swing despite an unusual economic situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, prices of basic food items, including rice, Gambia's staple food, are said to be in the rise. Consumers are already feeling the pressure, calling for urgent intervention by relevant authorities. This is the Serekunda market, the biggest and by far the most populous market in the Kanifi municipality. Buyers and sellers have expressed their concerns or their views surrounding the rising prices of food commodities in this country. Some put the blame on the government, but for some, it is the businessmen themselves to be blamed.
If the food prices are high and earning power is low, how do you expect the single parent to survive? How do you expect those who are not earning to that way to put food on the plate? And we have to understand that there are other people that are paying rent.
People complain, but I think it is the same everywhere in the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The goods are expensive. It is difficult for people, especially the poor. The government should help.
Alpha Jallo runs a food commodity shop in the busy Serekunda market. Jallo admitted that prices have gone up, but according to him, the cost emanated from importers and wholesalers, forcing retailers to increase accordingly. It is true that the goods are expensive. Customers do complain about it, but it is not our fault. It depends on the price we also buy from the wholesalers. Geneva Maria is a petty trader. She said the price increment is worrisome for household heads, while pleading for government's intervention.
The prices keep rising by the day. That's difficult, especially for heads of families. In fact, now the cost of fish rose to $200. The government should introduce price control to avoid malpractices.
Concerned Gambians urge government to put up an effective control mechanism to address the issue. Meanwhile, the National Assembly Select Committee on Trade has begun a fact-finding mission on trade and related matters and will make intelligent recommendations to that effect. Ibrahim Jallo, GRTS News.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment has earlier today issued a press release to this effect, in which the ministry said through its regular monitoring of the stock and the price levels of essential food commodities has observed that the prices of some of the essential commodities have generally increased. These prices are for the wholesale market. This increment, according to the release, were caused by both the exogenous and some local factors. And for a better and more clarity on this, we were joined earlier by the Trade Minister, the Honorable C.D. Keita. Let's take a listen. Good evening, Mr. Keita, and welcome to GRTS.
Good evening, Madam Keita.
Now, as you are aware that prices of some goods continue to skyrocket, as just indicated in your press release, what do you think is responsible for this?
Thank you very much. As we have indicated in our press release, these price increases are due to a combination of factors. Predominantly, the international market for international prices for these commodities have increased, and this increase is what the wholesale importers are passing on, and subsequently the increases are now passed to the retailers, ultimately to the consumer. If you look at the causes of the international price mechanism, The lockdown by the COVID-19 disrupted the supply chain. Oil prices have increased, shipping container prices have increased, the cost of freight have increased. So in a nutshell, this disruption created some imbalances to the supply chain, and as a result of the short supply, the prices of these essential commodities have increased.
Now, what are some of the measures taken by your ministry to address this particular situation at hand?
Yes, the ministry has been engaged, and we involve all the stakeholders from the importers to the relevant government agencies, the shipping companies, the clearing and forwarding agents, to understand the domestic element of the increase. Some of the increases were emanating from home, and this comprised about 20% of the overall increase. And what the ministry is doing is involve the key players and understand the causes, the root causes of this increase. Therefore, after all of this consultation, we will come up with a proposal as to how to ameliorate or reduce the increase in these prices. As you know, these prices are import-driven from the external market, over which the government has very limited control. But what the government can do is the internal factors that are within our capabilities, we can look into those. But given that they only comprise only 20% of the increase, there is very limited assurance that we can say that these price increases can be stopped altogether.
Now, we know that the Gambia has a free market economic system, but also a developing country. What mechanisms are in place to ensure the people, ordinary Gambians to be precise, are not exploited?
Yes, this is the key concern of the ministry. We monitor prices regularly. We follow what happens in the market. We do a weekly survey of the consumer prices, both at the wholesale and retail, and we are making sure that the price increases are not due to unexplained factors and are within reasonable limits. So as a ministry, we are engaging across the supply chain, all the players, to ensure that undue price increases are not passed to the consumers.
So is there any effort by government at this point in time to invest in national food enterprise in order to help in the price reduction?
Well, as you know, we are a private sector-led government and private sector-driven economy. And in a private sector, the role of government is to create an enabling environment where the private sector can flourish and participate. For government direct involvement in the commodity business, this is not the order of the day given the new economic paradigm. What the government can do and will do is to encourage more players in the supply side of the commodities so that we have adequate players in the supply side, so that there are enough suppliers to bring the market forces to play. Currently, the number of players in the commodity business are very few, and we believe we are encouraging all Gambians to participate in those particularly big businesses who can invest in this sector, so that market forces will be in full, will be rolled out to the benefit of the Gambian consumers.
So now what assurance can you give to Gambians who are finding it difficult to afford 3 meals a day and due to high prices, and what else do you want to share with the public?
Well, the assurances we can give the Gambian is that the government has this agenda on its as a priority. We are looking at the constraint in the local end of the supply chain, particularly the increase in freight costs caused by the increase in demurrages. We are working with the Ports Authority. We are working with the shipping agencies to see what incentives can be done to waive out, where possible, the levies that are introduced as a result of the increase in the shipping cost. The GPA has increased, has actually contracted a demurrage company to do the dredging. We believe that will increase the capacity of the port. With that, the congestion will be reduced, so that the demurrage and other ancillary charges will be removed or reduced significantly.
So away from the issue of price in the market, Honorable Minister, in one of the meetings precisely in Jarasoma, during the recently concluded Meet the People tour, we revealed plans by the government to include economic zones across the country. Can you tell us about these special economic zones and how far with the process?
Well, as we have announced at our meeting in Soma, these the economic zones used to predominantly exist in the urban centers, and now the rural area, such as the LRR, has the infrastructure in terms of the power, the road network, with the construction of the Senegambia crossing. That has even made that region very vibrant, and as such we deem it very necessary in collaboration with our agency GAIPA to move some of these industries into the provinces so that the economic activity can be spurred by these special economic zones. Already we are in consultation with the community, the local government authorities there, to provide the land and the necessary infrastructure for this economic, special economic zones to kickstart. Also, we have even started taking some potential investors to site, to visit the site so that they can look at it as part of their possible investment in the country. We believe this will spur growth in this area, create employment, and reduce the congestion on the urban areas.
All right, Honorable Minister C.D. Keta, thank you so much for your time on the news.
You are welcome. Thanks.
Good evening. Moving on, the cancellation of the start of voter registration for the 2021-2023 electoral cycle has prompted a heated debate in the country. Well, earlier today, the Independent Electoral Commission and the Gambia Public Procurement Authority appeared before the National Assembly Select Committee on Election Matters to explain to the lawmakers the deadlock between the two institutions with a view to find a solution. Aminata E. Sanya witnessed the proceedings and files in this report.
The Select Committee on Regional Government and Lands, Ombudsman and IEC, summoned the IEC and GPPA to table the logistics surrounding the postponement of the voter registration. To what many believed is a feud that exists between the IEC and the GPPA as a result of the national and international bidding competition of 2021 voter registration materials and equipment procurement has resulted to questions and comments from the citizens and concerned stakeholders. Bringing all parties involved to table issues, this also required the presence of the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, Dauda A. Jallow, who once delegated at the executive level to intercede.
My involvement as Attorney General was mentioned because I participated in one meeting where we tried, as executive, IEC had mentioned the route to the President, asking for his intervention to diffuse the stalemate between them and the GPPA. It was on this basis that the President assigned the Secretary General and myself to invite the parties and listen to the issues and try to see whether we can facilitate some form of consensus between them. Clearly, we listened to both of them. In that meeting, I made comments, and my comments have been showed by IEC, although I didn't know that minutes will emerge out of that. But minutes were taken by the Office of the President. Yes, when I looked at the issues, I listened to both sides. My position still remains the same. It is my ministry's position that IEC is independent, but Section 42 of the Constitution states that they are part of the public service. And if they are administering public funds, I think they should comply with the rules of applying public funds. This includes procurement.
The chair of the committee, Musa Amunyasi, delved into what is expected from both institutions and reminded them that all is geared towards national interests.
This dialogue is meant for us to reach a common position and take a common position in the interest of ensuring that the election calendar is implemented to the letter. We all know that both institutions have a stake, that is GPPA and the IEC. So I urge both of you, please, in reacting to the questions or comments or observations that are coming from members, honorable members for that matter, take time to give it a polite and decent reaction. Otherwise, if you want to be sentimental, it's going to deviate or is going to defeat the purpose for which we are here.
Highlighting the independence of the IEC and its capacity to conduct free and fair election for years, the chairman of the IEC, Aliu Momar Njai, implored Parliament to empower the IEC.
We exist because of elections. Without election, we will not exist, the IEC proper. And key amongst the IEC's role is to conduct elections. And the most important part of an election is to be able to vote. And for us, we pride ourselves, and even when I travel abroad, I always tell the people outside that our election system is the most transparent, most accurate, and most credible throughout the world.
After giving a detailed information that transpired between the IEC and the GPPA and the processes the IEC have engrossed to roll out the bidding for companies and the involvement of the GPPA, CEO of the IEC, Sambunjang Jai, categorically stated IEC's experience with GPPA.
The IEC is made of the Commission and the Secretariat. The Commission is the apex decision-making body. So whatever you want is doing it on and for the Commission. So even if the committee is headed by the chairman, and chairman happens to be the head of the commission, of that committee, he still have to report to the entire commission. This committee, that's the control committee, reported to the IEC commission that after evaluation, this is their observation and recommendation, which is ESI was found substantially responsive to the criteria. And this is the recommendation of the contrast committee to the commission. And the commission accepted and withheld this decision and instructed the contrast committee to communicate the decision or the recommendation of the IEC to the GPPA for approval.
On his part, the GPPA Director General Saliu Malang dilated on what GPPA requested from the IEC, and he said that GPPA was operating according to the principles.
GPPA is not holding country at ransom, but we are simply executing what we entrust us to carry on. We have our Bible, our Act and our regulation. And anything that we feel did not go down with the Act and regulation, we have a duty to point it out. How it is taken later, that's above us. And that's all we are doing. And the GPPA is not saying there will be no election. No, because there have been elections without GPPA anyway, we go to GPPA. But it's important also that we point it out. And I will take on what my good brother has said here. The objective is to make sure that they save the face of the country. We have the same objective. That is why this thing is coming into play. And later, if you go into the technicalities, if you want to go into technicalities, you will see why, you know, we want to go by with that opinion to save the face of the country.
Committee members took turns to seek clarifications from both parties and make comments. After a thorough scrutiny, the Select Committee will come up with a recommendation to help further resolve the issue. Aminata East Sanyang, GRTS.
Still on Assembly matters, the Public Enterprise Committee of the National Assembly on Tuesday continued its business of scrutinizing reports of public institutions at the Legislative House in Banjul. The latest government institution to come face-to-face with the oversight body is the Assets Management and Recovery Corporation. Samuel Ba has the details.
Assets Management and Recovery Corporation responded to the invitation of the Public Enterprise Committee to present their audited activity report and financial statements for the year 2019. Established in 1992, AMRC has the core mandate of debt recovery and managing and administration of government assets. According to the Managing Director of the corporation, AMRC will continue to make all necessary efforts to ensure that recovery is maximized.
The corporation since its establishment in 1992 has recovered about 80% of the entire Gambia Commercial and Development Bank portfolio to the tune of about 266 million from the various accounts, that is the commercial loans, development funds, and managed funds accounts.
MD Sane said among the many challenges they are faced with is the fact that a good number of loans have no collateral security, making recovery very difficult. Ami Tunkara is the corporation's finance director.
Total assets for the period ended 31st December 2019 stood at $286,313,729 in 2019, compared to the sum of $326,063,915 in 2018.
The auditor's opinion is that the reports present a true and fair view of the corporation.
We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. As stated in Note 18 of the financial statements on the finance lease between NABEC and AMRC, there has been a deviation from the accounting treatment with regard to finance leases IAS 17.
However, procurement officials did not turn up to give their opinion on the corporation's compliance with procurement regulations.
Board, our objective is to thoroughly review the activity report and financial statement for the year ended 31st December 2019 so that we present a report that will be fit for purpose.
The reports of AMRC will be considered at the adjournment meeting tomorrow Wednesday at 11 a.m. Samuel Bah, GRTS.
Moving on, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Gambia Secretariat, and the Department of Physical Planning and Housing is embarking on a study of the 40-meter road reserve on both sides of the Battle-Harden Highway. The study tour is aimed at making a detailed inventory of all existing structures within the 40-meter road reserve. To discuss this important exercise was Sekou Jan of the Department of Physical Planning, whom I spoke to earlier. Let's take a listen. Welcome to GRTS News, Mr. Jan.
Thank you for having us.
Now, tell us more about this very important exercise.
Well, this is a survey of the 40 meters road reserve starting from Airport Junction all the way to Sting Corner. Basically what we are doing, we just want to take stock of all the developments that are within the 40 meters road reserve, document it and get an inventory of it so that the engineers that are coming to do the construction of the road can start their work in earnest.
So when are you set to do this important exercise?
We've already started.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a repeat of it because we did it before, I think in 2017, 2018.
Okay.
So we're just doing it again to make sure everything that's within the 40 meters is covered, because there are a couple of new developments that came up when we first did the previous one. So we're going back to make sure that everything that's within the 40 meters is invented and we know exactly what's in there.
Okay, so what do you expect? Use of tobacco by women for fulfilling sexual pleasures has become a phenomenon practiced by many women in the Senegambia region. However, health experts has warned against the practice that rebranded many marriage settings from any angle one considers the practice. The use of the tobacco substance by women is on the increase, as Janky Ture finds out in this report.
Vaginal tobacco, locally known as taba or simankola, is a substance that stimulates sexual satisfaction for women. According to those who adopt the new method, described taba as a blessing in disguise, thus increasing their sexual libido during intercourse with their male partners, and as well as shrink genitals and address infertility. Sexual desire and satisfaction is becoming a great concern among partners. Many are now investing into desperate measures to fulfill their desires. The product is made from dried tobacco leaves and the roots of a tree called tangora. Some manufacturers add soda and shea butter. After purchasing the substance from the market, it is inserted in the genitals. Many of the women who have used the product say the effects include burning sensation, severe dizziness, vomiting, and even loss of consciousness. And to some users, it is practically impossible to stay away from it. The first day that I used taba, I felt dizzy, wanted to vomit. Due to that, I fall.
ngun mata foka moto mfonota nata ngala ranka barlarang be mininka
tabani dalitala yama first day minna second day third day
Once you are used to it, you cannot leave
tabani adoni ni kabini enta ni kamba fulela minjara.
The practice is now popular in West Africa, where tobacco is often referred to as the miracle recipe, which send your man to seventh heaven during intercourse with partners. However, doctors have warned against the practice, which potentially lead to complications, including urinary tract infections, yeast infections, or bacterial vaginosis.
I think that's a misconception. That's the belief that it helped them to satisfy their sexual desire. Some will say also it helped them in infertility. Some will also say it helped them to ease their labor. But these are all misconceptions. Because these are chemicals. It has all effect on the health of women. If you look at it, we have a record of a woman who used to help them in labor. In fact, it precipitated the labor because of the chemical it contained.
Since there is no scientific evidence to prove the effectiveness of the tobacco product, Mothers Health Foundation, a civil society organization, is intensifying their efforts to discourage women from the harmful practice. Rohiyata C is the founder of Mothers Health Foundation. She described the practice as suicidal.
100% of our victims said it's suicidal. We have victims who testify that they had premature birth. You resort in using tobacco. We have pictures, we have the evidences of what tobacco is causing. The laws need to be revisited. National Assembly needs to come up and look at the laws in place.
Contrary to claims that tobacco cures infertility, specialists in herbal medicine say tobacco is never a cure to infertility. We spoke to some women about the practice, while some men, whose life too is at risk, advise against the use of tobacco.
It's important we listen to healthcare workers, experts, to make sure that we battle things that are affecting our lives, that we think they are enjoyable to our life, but they are not. They are definitely putting our life backward.
Tobacco is described as a gynecological troublemaker that kills the vagina microbiota. It is strange that with the negative effects of tobacco among users, dealers and the source of the product is kept a secret. Authorities are campaigning against this harmful practice, but are there legislations to address such emerging health risks? For the news, I am Jenke Ture.
NIA Chief Harry Sambu continued his testimony at the Truth Commission, detailing his involvement in investigations as Director General of the Intelligence Agency. Janke Ture again.
Appearing for the second time, former NIA Director General Harry Sambu explained the modus operandi at the NIA and during investigations panels. He further told the Commission that Langtomban Tamba in 2006 serves as a defector between Jammeh and his investigative panel. Sambu also added that former President Jammeh was the one pulling the strings. Many witness statements alleged that torture was a form to extract confessions from alleged suspects during investigations. This position was confirmed by the NIA boss, as there were cases where Jammeh ordered the torture of suspects.
These people were tortured. Yes, the full knowledge of Harry Sambu, your honorable self, that these people were being tortured to give evidence against themselves.
With my full knowledge based on instructions and orders from Yaya Jammeh.
Examine the circumstances of which a group of journalists were arrested and detained at the NIA for giving information to the Freedom newspaper. Mr. Sambu said investigations proved their innocence, which he reported to the former president.
You were DG NIA?
Well,
you were Director General NIA?
I was. My own control.
You were aware that these people were not allowed to have lawyers?
I was. Well,
and you knew this was a blatant violation of the Constitution?
I knew.
They were detained, according to what you say, some of them for 3 months. During this period, were they taken before any court?
No, they did.
Another violation of their rights?
Yes.
The former NIA boss accepted that he had executed orders that were unlawful and illegal due to fear of life and that of his family. His testimony also examined the disappearances of his predecessor, Daba Marena and Co., which he described as a black day for him.
She asked what happened. So he was detained. Said, what happened? He said there was an attempted coup. Oh, yeah? Yes, and he is involved. Oh, yeah?
Born in Banjul in 1953, Sambo served as Admin and Finance Director, Deputy Director General and Director General at the NIA in his years of service since 1994. He also served as a security officer at the Office of the President. According to Sambo, after obtaining a master's degree in management, he was designated to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After a termination of his third contract as PS at the Ministry of Defense, Sambo went into exile for fear of his safety. Sittings continue tomorrow morning. For the news, I am Janke Toure.
And to this press release where it says it has come to the attention of the Ministry of Health that there are confirmed positive COVID-19 cases who are currently at large and interacting with the public. In a media statement, the ministry says out of the total positives confirmed between 20th January to 25th January 2021, there are 40 confirmed positive cases that have refused isolation or have absconded treatment centers. Similarly, the management is also aware that there are a large number of travelers who recently arrived in the Gambia from hotspot countries that have refused to abide by official protocols and or report to the health authorities for the mandatory test upon arrival. The ministry says this press release is to inform the public that there are persons deliberately posing a great public health risk to the population by their respective decisions to either 1. Evade COVID-19 health officials for either transfer to isolation centers or for testing upon arrival from hotspot countries. 2. Abscond the designated isolation centers. 3. Refuse to accept their confirmed positive results and or 4. Refuse to comply with the Ministry of Health case management policy and guidelines upon notification of their positive coronavirus status. Several efforts have been made in the past month by the Ministry of Health COVID-19 response team to reach and or convince the above-mentioned individuals to voluntarily comply. However, all efforts have turned out futile. The ministry continues to treat these matters with utmost and grave concern, and thus the ministry is hereby giving an order, an ultimatum to all those concerned that they are required to report themselves to the health authorities with immediate effect, and failure of which will lead to serious consequences, including the publication of names and identifying information of all those at large. Therefore, all positive cases should self-report by calling the following numbers: 1025 3011261 363 2098, and those travelers who entered the country and are yet to undergo sample collection must immediately report to Metze Hotel or call the aforementioned numbers for further clarification. The ministry would like to stress that the serious and ruthless misconduct will no longer be condoned under any circumstances. Anyone found not willing to cooperate with COVID-19 regulations will have their names and identifying information published in the media, and thereafter drastic measures will be taken against anyone that is non-compliant. Accordingly, the public is hereby reminded that the Public Health Emergency Act, Dangerous Infection Diseases Protection Regulations 2020, empowers the minister or officers acting under his authority to take strict measures as to when and where necessary. We urge the public to become more cautious and adhere to the advised safety precautions, especially that with regard to social distancing, wearing of face masks in public, and avoiding large gatherings. The release ends. And now to this breaking news just in, because the president of the Gambia Football Federation, Mr. Lamin Kaba Bajo, has been cleared by the FIFA Review Committee to vie for a position in the football governing body's main decision-making body, the FIFA Council. Mr. Bajo, who is competing with 6 other candidates for 2 of Anglophone's FIFA Council membership spots, underwent an eligibility check, and in a letter addressed to him on Tuesday, 26 January 2021, the FIFA Review Committee declared him eligible for the position, having passed the check. The election for the council position will be held on March 12th in the Moroccan capital Rabat at the CAF Elective Congress, where the president and members of the executive committee of the Continental Football Governing Body will be elected for another 4-year term. Mr. Bajo is one of the favorites for the position. The FIFA Council consists of 37 members, 1 president elected by the FIFA Congress, 8 vice presidents, and 28 other members elected by the Members Association, each for a term of 4 years. The Council is the main decision-making body of the organization. Its members are elected by the FIFA Congress. It is a non-executive supervisory and strategic body that sets the vision for FIFA and global football. GRTS Sports wishes Mr. Bajo good luck. Well, we will be back with news from outside the Gambia right after. Do stay with us. Now, welcome back. A large group of gunmen have abducted 7 children from an orphanage in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Kidnapping activities have increased across Nigeria in recent years, despite government's effort to tackle it. More in the CGTN News report.
The police spokesperson, Miriam Yusuf, says one of the hostages has been rescued already and that the rescue operation is underway to release the rest of them. Miriam did not give much details of the operation or the rescued hostage. The armed suspect stormed the Rachel Orphanage home in Abaji at the weekend, kidnapping 7 young orphans and a security guard. According to the police, the attackers forcefully entered the orphanage and whisked away their victims to an unknown location. They also kidnapped 3 other women from the same community afterwards. According to Global Terrorism Index, Nigeria is currently the 3rd most terrorized country in the world. Late last year, more than 300 schoolboys were rescued from kidnappers in Katsina State, the home of President Muhammadu Buhari, which is about 500 kilometers away from Abuja. At the start of this year, President Buhari reiterated his promise to halt the operations of kidnappings across the country by tasking security agencies to intensify their ongoing efforts. Phil Ihaza, CGTN.
Well, that was all in today's edition of the news, but before we go, a quick look at our top stories once again. Rise in prices of some essential food commodities raised concerns among Gambians. Minister of Trade, Honorable C.D. Keita, has been explaining the reason for the recent spike in prices. The tug of war between the Independent Electoral Commission and the Gambia Public Procurement Authority over the start of voter registration has reached the National Assembly. GRTS has been investigating the rise in use of a tobacco substance among some women for fulfilling sexual pleasure, but is this a healthy practice? And away from home, another kidnapping case in Nigeria as gunmen abducted 7 children from an orphanage in the capital, Abuja. Well, that was all we had time for in today's edition of the news. From me and the entire news team, we want to thank you for the pleasure of your company and continue watching GRTS.